So we're going to start this one off by showing you some elements that are going to go into the pond later on. We have lily pads, seagrass, which you can just get from bone mealing underwater, coral, sea pickles, artificial lily pads with coral fans on top to make them look like flowers. Because these are waterlogged blocks, the coral fans won't die. We also have some water hot dogs, which are just sea pickles put on top of green or lime green glass panes. The color of panes is a personal preference. We have kelp, which looks a lot more impressive when it's in deep water. We have piles of stones, which are made out of slabs, bricks, stairs, and walls, all of the mossy variety. We also have bamboo and sugarcane at different heights. These are maintained at their different heights by putting string on top, because if there's string on top, the bamboo and sugarcane will stop growing. We also can't forget our tropical fish. They make everything a lot more lively, and they're fun trying to collect all the different varieties. And lastly, we have to remember to throw flowers, grass, and some custom trees and lantern posts around the pond at the end. We don't want it to be too dark, and the flowers, grass, and trees just make it so it's not nearly as sparse. The last critical element is what we put underneath the water. We're going to be using a mixture of gravel, sand, coarse dirt, and podzol. You can also throw in cobblestone, stone, any other gray varieties that you like, or anything that you think makes the bottom of the pond look more interesting. We also have additional accents like boats, a hanging swing, and a fountain. You can add these as you see fit. These are all completely optional. Now on to construction. The very first task is of course to find an area and create the hole that your pond is going to be in. You can always edit an existing Minecraft pond, which you'll probably have to make a little bit deeper. Or you could do what I do and create a fully artificial one. If you do create an artificial one, one thing you should keep in mind is that you'll want some wider, shallow areas and not just have it all be really deep, like in the back left. The shallow areas are where we're going to be putting a lot of lily pads and cattails because those things are normally in shallow water and not out in the deeper parts. So it's a lot easier to fill in with those details if you leave some shallow areas. After you dig the pond, you replace the bottom with your colored blocks of choice, just so the bottom is a little more interesting. I put cobblestone in here because I didn't think there was enough gray blocks with just the gravel. You can always throw in dead coral, andesite, stone bricks, or anything else that you want. Next, I'm just feathering around the edge so it doesn't look like there's just a square around it, because I was using World Edit and I just filled in the blocks in a large cube. Of course, now we're adding those design elements from earlier into the pond. We have our kelp, coral, some seagrass, all of our tropical fish, and then we're going to start throwing in lily pads. Again, putting them mostly in the shallow areas is what makes the most sense. You're going to want to make sure that those trapdoors are waterlogged and on the top side. You'll know if they're waterlogged if they're half in the water and half out. The waterlogged trapdoors allow the coral fans to stay nice and bright and colorful without ever dying, whereas if you put them on a not waterlogged trapdoor that was above the water, they would turn gray and it would be very disappointing. I threw some sea pickles in the water just to brighten it up a bit at nighttime, and then we go around to throwing in cattails, again in the shallow areas. The most important thing when placing down all the cattails is to remember to not put them directly next to another block. The glass panes will try and connect to it and it will ruin the effect. So you're going to want to make sure to have some open space so the cattail glass panes don't attach to anything. I like to throw in a small ring of short bamboo, usually 6 blocks high or less, again stopping them from growing any taller by placing a string on top. I bone meal them a couple times before putting the string on, but you can always feel free to wait if you're in survival. We can't forget to add some simple stepping stones around the pond. And I threw in some more stones at the bottom because it looked like it needed a little something extra. The main centerpiece of this one is the hanging bench. That's why I left the little bump in the pond earlier, was to put this out so there's a nice place for people to go. Because this is a super flat area and there's not a lot of hills, I have to make sure to throw in a lot of stone outcroppings just to break up the terrain a little bit. If you're in a hillier area, I would still suggest to throw in some stones because it looks very nice, but you don't have to put in nearly as many because the change in terrain height should do a lot of the work for you. And of course, since we're in a little creative box, we're going to have to add some trees around. You could always choose to build your pond next to somewhere that had trees, or make custom trees. This is an area in which you can be very creative if you want to be. Lastly, it didn't look green and full enough for me, so I added in a lot of extra dark oak leaf blocks. If you pile them on top of the stones, or as you can see on top of the hanging bench, it makes it feel a little more overgrown and like they're vines. You can also throw on vines too if you want. And throw in some small custom trees, which are just dark oak fences with some dark oak leaf blocks on top. I did forget to put the sugar cane earlier, but we're going to throw it all in now, again stopping it from growing any taller by putting string on top when it's 1 or 2 high. If it's 3 high, it won't grow any taller, but you can always place sugar cane on top of other sugar cane to make it taller if you want. The very last stage is to throw on some lanterns, so it's not dark enough for mobs to spawn. If you ever find yourself needing more light, you can always hide light sources underneath of leaf blocks. It'll allow the light to come through without you having to worry about seeing a bunch of torches everywhere. You can follow the link in the description if you want to follow me on Twitch as well. I also make a lot of TikToks under the exact same name, and you can also join my Discord if you ever want to chat about Minecraft.